Okay, so we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we will identify the best practices you can take to avoid Department of Public Health deficiencies in the area of financial survey tags. I'm Kelly Marsimo, Vice President of Sales and Marketing for EF Senior Care, and I will be your guide. EF Senior Care provides services to dozens of Massachusetts skilled nursing facilities each year, and we also own our own facility and regularly communicate with owners, operators, lenders, regulators, receivers, and investors. Through our work, our team knows firsthand the survey tags that the regulators are citing. Today, we are pleased to share information about some of the top financial survey tags we're seeing in the field, along with recommended best practices to avoid them. Okay, here we go. Let me introduce our panel of industry experts who have more than 85 years experience dealing with nursing home administration and financial management. Our co-founder, Bob Eisenstein, is a recognized leader in the industry. He has been a licensed nursing home administrator since 1990 and is the chairman of the board of the Long-Term Care Finance Association. Danielle Dang is a registered nurse and a national clinical reimbursement specialist with 25 years of experience. And Carla Soares has more than 30 years experience in skilled nursing accounting and is a recognized leader across all business office functions. She recently joined EF Senior Care as the field account manager. They're going to give you the latest insights into what they and their clients are seeing from regulators in the field. So let me turn it over to Bob.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction, Kelly. And on behalf of our entire EF team, let me also welcome all of you. Nice to see so many familiar faces joining us this afternoon. We're going to intertwine 3 or 4 important objectives throughout the presentations this afternoon. The first one, most importantly, is some of these F tags that we're presenting may directly impact your reimbursement if deficiencies are found. And I think Danielle Dang is going to give some great examples of that on PASARs. Also, as we know, DPH is very fond of cross-tagging deficiencies now that they're back in action. So, for example, if you have a bed hold policy that must be put into your admission paperwork and it's not there, they're going to tag also some of these F tags crossing over to the ones we're talking about today, which will indirectly could impact your reimbursement. The third is having to do with documentation. What we're finding throughout these presentations this afternoon is communication between your business office and the rest of your clinical team is critically important to ensure you don't contribute to any loss of reimbursement. I'm going to go right into my first F tag to discuss this afternoon, which is F625, and that has to do with notice of bed hold policy before or upon transfer. This is a very important F tag, obviously, first of all, so that you don't get a deficiency on it. But most importantly, if we could go right to the best practice, I'm going to talk about some of the practices we see going through this particular F tag. You must ensure that you have bed hold policy language in your admission paperwork, as I stated previously, and most importantly, that the resident and or family has signed acknowledgement of that upon admission. A best practice there would be to audit your admission paperwork. Very simple, to make sure that that documentation is present. Again, once the occurrence happens where a resident is transferred out of the facility, you must then reactivate that policy, making sure that the resident and or family is specifically notified and that hopefully they will sign the notification. One thing to note here is the timing. Obviously, we have agency staff that a patient may go out, a resident may go out at 10 p.m. or 2 a.m. You must make sure that everybody knows this policy and that they're following it, and specifically that the resident or family is notified. Obviously, paperwork can follow the next day. And for you administrators out there, in your morning meeting, you should be reviewing any previous day's bed holds that went out to ensure that you're complying with the protocol. As we all know, Medicaid will cover up to 20 days for medical leave and 10 days for non-medical leave per 12-month period. It's very important, again, communication between your business office and the rest of the team. Keep track of your Medicaid resident day transfers and make sure you're billing appropriately and you're coding where that patient is every single day. One trick here is I would focus on the day of transfer as well as the return date. because you may be losing 1 or 2 days here and there without realizing it. For non-Medicaid residents, it's also critically important that the family receives information about paying privately for the bed hold. So review all of your transfer and procedures for Medicaid residents as well as non-Medicaid residents. Moving right along to the next F tag, F626, talks about permitting residents to return to the facility. Now, under Massachusetts law, under best practice, we do have a duty to make sure that we readmit these residents. However, there is a little window of opportunity related to if the resident is a danger to self or others. You can start to document that situation earlier, prior to the transfer. This is very important. We all know, all of you on this webinar, I'm sure, have residents that I'm talking of. We have substance use disorder residents. We have psych folks. We have that crotchety old gentleman who's just very physically assaultive during transfer. In those cases, if you start your documentation early, prior to transfer, you initiate the process, involve your local ombudsman. They're your partner. The first call made from a hospital, if they're contesting a return, they're going to call DPH, and DPH is going to ask the ombudsman if they're aware of your patient. You want them to be your partner to help you make the case for having that resident go to a more appropriate setting. I didn't put this on the list, but partnering with the hospital staff is also critically important. Your social worker probably already knows the case managers in the hospital. Your nurse might know the nurse manager. Have your medical director also involved. And you want to try to avoid using words like D for denial or R for refusing. What you really want to do is work collaboratively with the hospital staff and encourage the verbiage such as finding the most appropriate clinical setting for that resident. In the event that the resident must come back to you, you have a couple of other options that I've listed here. One is you can insist that the resident be behavior free for 24 to 48 hours. If the resident was on a one-to-one, let's say a section for psychiatric issues, you can also insist that they be free from one-to-one for 24 to 48 to 72 hours. Those are some helpful tips on these two F tags. And now I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Danielle Day, to talk about PASARs.
Thank you, Bob. I wanted to talk about F tag F644 and 645, all surrounding the PASAR process. PASAR is critical in Massachusetts as it relates to your Mass Health payments. The level 1 pre-admission screening and resident review must be signed, dated, and timed before admission and upon a significant change in resident status. So the critical piece here is the pre-admission part. It should be dated and timed prior to the resident's arrival. There isn't specific requirements around who may complete it as far as whether it's a facility staff member or a hospital staff member, just that it must be completed prior to the resident's arrival or admission date and time. You will need to have supporting documentation to support whatever was determined on that PASAR or what you didn't determine on that PASAR. So you will need the hospital H&P, the hospital discharge summary. If it was completed by a hospital or outside agency, you must obtain a copy of the PASAR and all supporting documentation, including the level 2, if applicable. So whether it's an abbreviated or a full level 2, you will need a copy of that, as well as their supporting documentation for the coding of it. There has been an enhanced focus on the date and time and signature on the PASAR. You want to not only make sure that there is a time on there with the date, you also want to make sure the person signing that PASAR is a valid licensed professional that is considered appropriate for completing that PASAR. So your licensed nurse, licensed social worker, and that they have a valid license. There has been an enhanced focus also on the validity of the patient's history and that supporting documentation has been obtained to appropriately include or exclude any of the items on the PASSAR. We know facilities have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because they could not obtain a level of care screen, have the resident coded, and bill for Mass Health due to not having valid PASSARs. Your ASAP nurse screening approval dates will only span the dates covered by a valid PASSAR. If it's determined that you didn't have a valid PASSAR for days 1 through 6, well, you're not going to be able to get a level of care screening approval until day 7, when there was one in place, for example. If there's a pattern of compliance issues around the PASSAR process by a facility, the facility can become a focus from DMH and the ASAP agency. This will require an increased focus as well as potential additional screening around that process that you may have to complete and submit to them on a proactive basis. Facilities must keep a copy of every resident's level 1 assessment and, if appropriate, their level 2 assessment. We strongly recommend that you upload this to your electronic health record, and any historical PASSARs that may not be in there today. If, for example, you only went live this past year or the year before, you want to go back and make sure you have at least the most recent valid PASSAR on file in that electronic health record. Recently, the DMH UMass office did a project where they had facilities sending historical PASSARs to them that they did not have in their cloud. So it's best practice to really upload all PASSAR related materials. It's not just for compliance, it also will impact your payments. If the assessment is positive, an independent level 2 assessment must be performed by the appropriate PASSAR authority. Currently, like I said, it's the UMass School of Medicine that handles the DMH DMR PASSARs. I'm going to take a quick poll now. Do you have an internal process to ensure completion or correction for PASSARs?
Oh,
And the results are pending. We'll come back to those results shortly. For those of you who don't know, in October 2021, there were significant changes to the PASSAR process and the PASSAR form. One of the biggest changes impacting facilities is the revision to the less than 30-day determination. This area is missed time and time again. And if you use the same rules you would use for Medicare or even a Medicaid bed hold, in theory, you want to make sure that you understand the resident's status at the hospital. That will determine if the PASSAR is appropriate. If the resident is not admitted and is only in the ER or observation, a less than 30-day PASSAR is not acceptable. It will not be appropriate. You have to follow through with the full PASSAR screening if it is triggered. So again, a less than 30-day may not be used if the resident is in observation or in the ER or coming from a community setting like an assisted living or home. So this is one of the biggest changes since 2021. If a 30-day is appropriate and they meet the requirements, then it is best practice to track these on a shared document and submit them to the PASSAR office on or around day 25. You must use the PASSAR cover sheet and submit the supporting documentation, and you will want to save and upload, if possible, your evidence of that submission. Because if you get audited or DPH is looking for compliance with that, you need to be able to show that you submitted the request timely. Even if DMH can't come out and do that screening for 3 weeks, at least you submitted it timely, and that meets the burden of the requirement. When in doubt, double check. So if you're not certain of a resident's change in status, or if they meet the requirements, it's okay to just resubmit it to the PASSAR office and check with them. It is better to ask questions than to get denied later or be cited in a survey. Understand the circumstances around someone who is admitted with a level 2 assessment, and make sure you follow the process for any subsequent level 2 assessments that are required. If a determination is made that they need special services, the facility must follow through with coordinating those services to meet the residents' needs. And just a reminder, those residents with significant mental illness will need to have their PASSAR resubmitted annually and with any significant change. Any resident who has a significant change will also require a resubmission to the PASSAR office. If you use contract social work, you'll want to follow up on their process and track the timing of your PASSARs, as your staff may be rotating through and they may not be consistently following a system that you believe they are doing. So as a best practice, we recommend that the administrator be the keeper of the log or the calendar that is shared between a few key disciplines in the building and is maintained that way as a check and balance. Not only are they auditing that you have them and that they are completed and submitted, but that you have the supporting documentation to support what was signed on those. So as you're thinking about your audits and your QAPIs, you'll want to make sure that you not only just, that you're not just checking that they were completed, you want to make sure that they were completed accurately. So spot check on occasion that the history and physical reflects appropriately what the resident's condition is and that it's accurately coded on that PASSAR. If you find an error, it is essential that you complete a revision to your PASSAR as soon as you find it. You will want to make sure that this is done timely, as it can impact your payments. If it is determined that that prior PASSAR is invalid, you will not be eligible for payment for those dates under MassHealth. So a 2-person tracking system on a shared form led by the administrator is the best practice recommended. I'm going to hand it over to Carla now. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. There has been an increase in tags around personal funds, resident accounts, and surety bonds. Therefore, I want to discuss the tags and the best practice to prevent these tags. So safeguarding and providing access to a resident's funds are a major responsibility of all skilled nursing facilities. There are a number of tags, F567 to F571, related to these matters that are designed to protect your residents' financial resources. Those tags cover setting and posting minimum banking hours for your residents, depositing funds in an interest-bearing account, providing quarterly statements for your personal needs accounts and on demand as well, notifying residents or responsible parties if the balances approach the $2,000 eligibility limit, and advising the need for a spend down, maintaining an adequate surety bond. Now, let's take a look at the best practices. We all know different companies have different process for the trust fund paperwork, most included with your admission agreements. Facilities are required to have a trust fund authorization for all open accounts. all personal needs funds over $50 for the Medicaid residents and in excess of $100 for all other residents needs to be in an interest-bearing account. And again, just make sure you see that interest-bearing account needs to be interest. Auditors are asking residents if after-hours funds are available. Banking hours should be posted in your facility so it's visible to all the residents. Facilities should have a process for the resident funds requests on weekends and on evenings. It could be to having a small amount of petty cash in the box with your charge nurse, or a lot of facilities have receptionists for after hours, but a process does need to be established. Facilities need to ensure that there's separate ledger balances for each resident. So one account, but separate ledger balances. Mostly monthly reconciliations between facility personal needs system and the bank statement should be completed. All deposits, withdrawals should be validated monthly, but most importantly, interest should be dispersed for all residents. Facilities often forget tasks like quarterly statements, and being the reason for that because they're to be sent out quarterly per regulation. Also, the statements need to be available when requested by the residents and their legal parties. Moving on to residents and responsible parties have to be notified when their personal needs account is at $1,800. And there should be a written notification to protect us and protect the residents. Spend down can be used towards personal needs, prepaid funeral, burial expenses, and we can also utilize that towards room and board charges after approval from a resident or a responsible party. It has been an issue the last couple of years with COVID, with residents receiving stimulus payments. The residents didn't spend funds due to no presence of hairdresser or barber at the facilities, no outings, etc., which created their over assets. Quite a few Medicaid eligibilities stopped during redetermination time due to being over assets. Now we can move on to our final poll question. And we'll just take a minute.
There it is.
So do you know your current surety bond amount? And I'll give you a little bit of time to answer that question.
Okay.
Okay, I think we should be good. Waiting on the results. No, not yet.
We're good.
There we go.
There's your results.
Oh, this is great. Well, actually, it's half and half, it seems. So let's move on to the surety bond question. So surety bond is an insurance policy which has an expiration date, which will be around your premium renewal date. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. It's because most of the time you will get notification from insurance companies that your premium needs to be renewed. But of course, we all get emails every day and that can be missed. All resident trust accounts do have a surety bond or have to have an active surety bond. During COVID, surveyors weren't reviewing the surety bonds. Surveyors are now back in the field and they are checking for this. Don't confuse bank statements ending balance with the highest balance. Surety bonds must cover your highest monthly balance. So that will be around the time you get most Social Security checks and direct deposit into your bank account, whatever that balance is, that should cover your surety bond. You should actually give yourself about $1,000 to $2,000 extra. Also impacted this as individual balances increased significantly, and when reviewed cumulatively, many facilities' balances were above their surety bond amount due to the COVID stimulus payments. All right, now let's move on to other financial tags. There are a few other tags that we are seeing that we don't have time to cover today. And just as an example, they're refunds, credit balances, Medicaid, Medicare residents charged only for non-covered services. And another one very important that we've seen is PBJ. So for example, as PBJ, just be aware that if you don't submit your quarterly PBJ staffing data on time, such as if you don't submit a PBJ report showing no CNA hours for 1 or more days, or if you don't submit a PBJ report showing no RN hours for 4 or more days, you will receive a 1-star staffing rating and no higher than a 2-star overall rating for the next quarter. And like I said, if you have any questions about PBJ reporting, it could be an extensive topic, obviously, that we don't have time to cover today. But if you have any questions regarding anything else we've covered, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you again, and I'm going to hand it back to Kelly.
Thank you, Carla. Before we get to the questions, I want to thank everyone for hanging on. We're running a little over, but I think it's important to just get through these last 2 steps. Before we want to share some information about our innovative software product designed specifically for administrators and operators to help you manage your facilities. EF Ally includes a plan of correction module. So if you're unlucky enough to receive one of these tags, you can use it to write your plan of correction, email assigned tasks to your team members, track that they complete those corrective actions, and document all these steps that you took for the regulators. EF Ally helps you do so much more, including running your morning meetings, handling reportables and grievances, maintaining an electronic contract book, and more. So if you're looking for inexpensive consulting advice to help with your plan of correction, EF Ally only costs $500 a month. And to learn more, including customizing your own short demo, you can visit the website that you see posted there. So now we're going to take a look at, we only have time. I'm just going to let the panel answer one question. Do we have 30 days to send money from a resident's personal needs account if a resident discharges to another facility? I think, Carla, you can take this question, if you would.
So no, when a resident transfers from one skilled nursing facility to another, you only have 10 days to send those funds over to the resident or to the new facility. Be aware that you should review your patient liability to ensure that no funds are due to you before you transfer or send the money over to the new facility.
Thank you, Carla. And I want to say thank you to all of our presenters for their hard work putting this together for you. And just want to let you all know that we will be sending out as a follow-up the slide deck and the recording, so you can take a look with it again or share it with your teams. And please, if you have any questions or need anything more from us, please reach out. Thank you all so much for attending today.